We're in the Gemara and Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. We're going to start in the Gemara Tanu Rabbanan. Nun Vav Amud Aleph, the first words on the line are the Bei Biri. The Gemara here is going to be going back to the beginning of the Perek, discussing the Tchum coming out of a city. When you have the city, how do you measure the Tchum from the city 2,000 Amas? So, Zok the Gemara, let's see. Tanu Rabbanan Ba L'Rabba. If you want to make the city into a square, right? You have a city that's a circle and you want to make it into a square, or you have a city that's a square, but it's a square not in the position of the four sides of the world. It's Tzafin, Daram, Mizrach, Ma'ariv. It's not square in that position. So how do you square it out in that position? Miraba biribua oilam. You make it square like the square of the world, the sides of the world. Noisin, tzafayna litzfayna oilam. So you have the tzafin of the world, D'Raima l'darim oilam, and the darim to the darim of the world, and the same thing also with Mizrach and Ma'ariv. Now, how does a person know what's the tzafin, what's darim, what's Mizrach, what's Ma'ariv? How could you see? So the Gemara gives you a way how to be able to see this. V'simanech, you're simin to know what's tzafin and what's darim, agala, bit or egla. Rashi's guy said there's different gears how you read this. Egla bitzafin. There's the stars in a shape of a calf in the north side of the sky. Akrav. There's the stars in the shape of a scorpion. Badarim in the south side of the sky. So if you look up at the stars, you'll be able to see what position you have to make the circle in. So we're going to need a lot of pictures for today's Gemara. No, the Gemara. You see the pictures.
Yeah. Thank you.
So if you look here and picture Shin Zayin, so they show you have a city that's right here in the globe, and above on the north side of the sky you have an Egla, and on the south side of the sky you have a Akrav, shape of the stars in the shape of an Akrav. That's one way how to know what's Tzafin and what's Darim. Got it? Over here in this Oiz V'Hada Gemara, it's on page Mem Aleph. The bottom of the number of the picture is number Shin Zayin.
Right.
There you go. Okay, so you got picture Shin Zayin. So you see over here they draw it for you. Okay, this is the first method that the Braisa gives how to know what's Tzafin and what's Darim. Rabbi Yosi gives a different method. Don't close the picture. If you can't square it like the square of the world, you can't use this method we just gave. Miraba kimin hatkufa. You can square it like the sides of the world by following the tkufa, which means the sun, the position of the sun in the sky that creates the four different seasons of the world. Right? There's the summer, spring, summer, winter, fall, winter. The four seasons are all based on the position of the sun in the sky. Okay, what's the positions of the sun in the sky? The position of the sun in the sky when you have a long day, and also the place where the sun sets on a long day, on a summer day. The sun is positioned in the north side of the sky. Of course, the sun rises in east and comes down in west, but it's Mizrachis Tzfainis. It's going to be the northern part of the sky when it comes up and goes down. We'll take a look in the picture in a second. B'yom Katzer, when you're in the winter and it's a very short day, and v'shekas b'yom Katzer, and the sun also comes down, it sets on a short day, zeu pnei darim. In the winter, the sun is positioned in the south side of the sky. Tkufas Nisan, the Tkufas Tishrei. In spring, during Nisan, and in fall, during Tishrei. So then, the day and the night is sort of equal. Chame yaitze b'chatzi mizrach, v'shekas b'chatzi ma'ariv. So the sun comes out in half of mizrach, half of ma'ariv. The sun is right in the middle of the sky. It's not in tzafin and it's not in darim. It's in the middle, and that's why you have the day and the night, which is equal. So take a look in picture Shin Ches. So over here you see exactly how the seasons work. So if you take a look at the red circle of the cycle of the sun, how it's going around the globe, so you have Tammuz, right? So in Tammuz time, the sun is coming up from Tzafin side, and it goes and it comes around, and it also sets at the Tzafin side. Right? So that's a longer day. If you take a look at the green circle, which is Tevis, so the sun comes up all the way at Darim side, and it comes back down at Darim side, and it makes a very short cycle for the day. And then you have the middle, Tishrei and Nisan, which is going to be average. The day and night are equal. So if you want to know which position, how to make the square of the city, you have to look, depends what time of the year you're in, you have to take a look at where the sun in the sky is. Is it coming, if the sun is on the...
The Tchum is going to be different?
No, the Tchum is going to be the same, but the position, we're talking about how to position the actual square of the city, to know what's Tzafin, to know what's Darim. So if you're in the summer, and you see the sun coming up in a certain side, you know, oh, that's where Tzafin is. And you're in the winter, and you see where the sun is coming up, you know, oh, that's Darim. Okay, so this is
based that always the revu has to be based on the
based on the way the Ruchais Ha'olam, the actual Ruchais Ha'olam of Tzaf and Darim, Mizrach Ma'ariv. You can't just create your own square positioned how you want. It has to be positioned together with the Ruchais Ha'olam, right? Okay, now the Gemara brings the Braisa brings a pasuk for this. Shenema, the pasuk says, Haylech al Darim. The sun goes towards Darim. V'sayviv el Tzafin, and it comes around on Tzafin. What does this mean? That it goes towards Darim and it comes around on Tzafin. Haylech el Darim bayayim. Daytime, the sun comes up at Darim side, at the south. V'sayviv, and then by night, when the sun comes back around from below to come back up, el Tzafin, balayla. That's by night. Take a look at the picture. So you see over here, you see the cycle of the sun is on an angle. It's not a direct cycle up, it's on an angle. So in the winter, when the sun is coming up Darim, or not only in the winter, but Chlal, if you take a look at the angle of the sun, the angle of the cycle of the sun is going towards Darim. Right? It comes up and towards Tzafin, and it makes that angle to come around towards Tzafin, right? Towards Darim, that is, by daytime. It goes towards Darim, and then when it comes below, under the world, on the other side of the world, that is, so it's coming in the angle towards Tzafin. That's the pshat of the pasuk here. It's Haylech. By daytime, it goes towards Tzafin. Where am I? Again, it goes towards Darim during the day, and then it comes back around towards Tzafin. That's the angle that the sun goes on. Soiviv, Haylech haruach. This is the continuation of this pasuk. Soiviv, Haylech haruach. Elu pnei mizrach upnei ma'ariv. So this pasuk here is saying the position of the sun coming on the side of Mizrach. When the sun comes up, it comes up on the side of Mizrach, and then pnei ma'ariv, it comes down on the side of Ma'ariv. Shepa'amim mahalchason upa'amim misavavason. That when the sun comes on a long day, so then the sun comes up on Mizrach, and then on a shorter day, it comes down in Ma'ariv. If you take a look over here, take a look in the long day. If you took a look again at the red circle, so you see the sun is going a very long distance on Mizrach. But if you look at the shorter day, the sun doesn't go that distance on Mizrach. It goes directly towards Darim. It doesn't make that high. It doesn't go up so high as it does in a shorter day. So over here, there's a difference between the Tkufa of Tevis and the Tkufa of Tammuz. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. Amarav Mesharshia, Lesnu Lahani Klola. I do not agree to any of these methods to figure out what's Tzafin and what's Darim. Why? Regarding the sun at least. Using the sun to know where it's Tzafin or Darim. The Tanya, Lo Yatza Chama Me'olam Me'kerem Mizrachis Tzfainis. The sun will never come out from the corner of the sky from Mizrachis Tzfainis. V'shaka Be'kerem Aravas Tzfainis, or set at the south, at the northwestern side of the sky. Never comes out mamish at the corner. And the sun will never come up, even in the winter, in the shortest day. It doesn't come up in the corner of the sky of Mizrachas Draimis, V'shaka Bekeren Maravas Draimis, and it does not come down all the way at Darim. What Rav Mesharshi is saying is, even if this picture that we made here is true, that in the summer the sun is positioned more towards the Tzafin, and in the winter the sun is positioned more towards the Darim. but it's still all within the middle of the sky. There's relative tzafon and darim, but the sun never goes all the way to the corner to come out completely from the corner of tzafon side, or in the winter completely from the corner and darim side. So therefore you can't use this as a method to measure what's tzafon and what's darim. Amar Shmuel, says Shmuel, Ein tkufas Nisan neifeles ela barba rive hayayim. The tkufa of Nisan, which is the cycle, what we're talking about over here is the cycle of the sun, which creates the 4 seasons of the year. How long is the cycle of the sun for the entire year? The cycle of a sun that comes back to where it was in the beginning of the year is 365 days and 6 hours. That's the exact length of the cycle of the sun. Okay, and when did the sun get hung up in Shamayim? In the beginning of creation, B'yayim Haravi, the beginning of the night. Okay, so now when it comes back to the next year, if you want to have exactly 52 weeks, and it should be exactly back to the same position it was before, that would be 364 days. So because the year is 365 days and another 6 hours, so therefore there's an extra 30 hours to the year, more than the exact cycle of the sun to come back to its original place. So there's another 24 hours, plus another 6 hours, another 30 hours, and therefore every year the sun comes back, the next Nisan, it's going to come back to its place. The tkufa of the year, of Nisan, of this year, is going to be 6 hours a day and 6 hours ahead from the year before. So let's say if last year, Nisan, the tkufa began at Wednesday night, exactly at the beginning of the night, the following year, it's going to be Thursday at Chatzais Halayla. Thursday, 24 hours later, but it's also going to be 6 hours later, because it's 30 hours moved ahead, 365 days, and 6 hours makes the tkufa of the following year 6 hours later, in the following day.
So it's missing of the cycle 30 hours, or it's
Adding. We add to the cycle
the sun
30
is
hours.
30 hours more.
But every year
Right.
it's another 30 hours, or it's 30 hours of the past year?
No. From the past year. In other words, it takes you an extra 30 hours to get to that new tkufa. So if 1 year the tkufa began at Wednesday exactly at the beginning of the night, let's say the beginning of the night was 6 o'clock, the following year it's going to begin on Thursday. The tkufa of Nisan will begin on Thursday at 12 o'clock a.m.
But one thing is, since it started, about the 4th day on the creation, so every year it's been adding it?
Correct, yes. So therefore the tkufa of Nisan always moves forward.
Years.
What?
Now the year is not anymore 365 days.
It's because of what? Because of
every
the...
year it adds 30 hours for that year. It doesn't continuously. No.
That doesn't accumulate.
No.
Okay, so therefore it comes out that the tkufa of Nisan, the time in the day when the tkufa of Nisan begins, spring, the tkufa of Nisan is spring. When exactly is the time when that season begins? There are 4 parts of the day. It could either start in the beginning of the day in the morning, the first hour in the morning, or it could start in the beginning of the night, or chatzais hayom or chatzais halayla, because it's always moving forward in increments of 6 hours ahead. So therefore it always changes, either the beginning of the night or chatzais, beginning of the day, beginning chatzais. That's b'negeya to Nisan. How about the other tkufas? Ve'ein tkufas Tammuz neifeles. Now, when it comes to the tkufa of Tammuz, the Gemara makes the cheshbon. Rashi actually makes the whole cheshbon, but the Gemara here just tells you the facts of in what times of the day the tkufa of Tammuz, which is the summer season, which part of the day exactly does the sun come to that point when the season of the summer begins? Eloi be'achas umachza. It could be or in 1.5 hours, oi b'sheva umechza, or 7.5 hours, bein b'yom or bein b'layla, whether it's daytime, whether it's nighttime. Now the Gemara tells you when the tkufa of Tishrei, which part of the day will the tkufa of Tishrei, which is fall, begin. Vein tkufas Tishrei neifeles ela oi b'shalish hoys, or 3 hours in the day, oi b'teisha shoys, or 9 hours in the day, bein b'yom or bein b'layla, whether it's day or whether it's night. And how about the winter tkufa? What time of the day does the winter tkufa begin, which is Tevis? Ve'ein tkufas Tevis neifeles ela oi ba'arba mechza, or 4.5 hours, or be'eser mechza, 10.5 hours, bein b'yom, bein b'layla, whether it's day or whether it's night. So I'm not going to go through the whole cheshbon here in detail, which Rashi makes, but just to make the basic point of what the Gemara is saying here is based on. It's all based on the simple thing that the cycle of the sun is 365 days and 6 hours. If you take 365 days and 6 hours and you divide it into 4, what do you get?
91.
So you get 91. You get 91 and 7.5 hours, exactly. If it would be 91 days is exactly 13 weeks. So then that would mean that whenever the tkufa, if it would be exact 91 days, so whenever the tkufa of Nisan began, the tkufa of Tammuz would begin in the exact same time of the day, 13 weeks later. So if the tkufa of Nisan began Chatzais Halayla on Thursday night, the tkufa of Tammuz would begin exactly 3 weeks later, Thursday night, Chatzais Halayla. But because there's an extra 7.5 hours, so whenever the tkufa of Nisan began, the tkufa of Tammuz is going to begin 13 weeks later, 91 days later, plus 7.5 hours later. So therefore, for example, if the tkufa of Nisan began Chatzais Halayla, so the tkufa of Tammuz will start 1.5 hours into the morning. If it would be 6 hours ahead, it would be exactly the beginning of the day, but it begins 7.5 hours later. And the same thing also with the tkufa of Tishrei and the tkufa of Tevis. Each tkufa, each season will always start 7.5 hours after whenever the previous season began. That's the basic cheshbon of this Gemara. And you can go through, Rashi makes more of the cheshbon specifically of how the Gemara, the exact amounts. So the Gemara says it, but that's the point behind it. Another thing the Gemara says, ve'ein bein tkufa le'tkufa. Oh, so here the Gemara actually puts down the rule of it. The Gemara itself says this. Ve'ein bein tkufa le'tkufa. The time, how much time is there between one tkufa, one season, and the next season? Ela tishem ve'echad yom, 91 days, which as I mentioned is exactly 13 weeks, and v'sheva sha'is mechza, and 7.5 hours. That's when you divide 365 and 6 hours into 4, that's the number you get. Ve'ein tkufa moisheches mechaverta ela chatzisha. Each tkufa is removed from the one before a half hour. So what does this mean? When it says here that it's removed a half hour, so Rashi explains this refers to the cycle of the koichvim, the kachavim, the mazolis. We learned about this a few times before, that there are 7 mazolis, and each mazal is for 1 hour. Every single hour, the mazel changes. There's another mazel every hour. This is connected to the idea of not making kiddush on Friday night between 6 and 7, because that's the hour when you have on Friday the mazel of madim. Every hour there's another mazel. Right? They have over here a picture for this? Okay, 1 second. Let's take a look at the picture over here. Okay, yeah, so you have the mazalis over here. So those mazalis keep on changing 1 hour. So the beginning of a tkufa, since we said that the beginning of the next tkufa starts 7.5 hours after the previous tkufa, if it would start exactly 7 hours after, so 7 hours is the end of the cycle of the mazalis. 7, each hour, 1 mazel. But because it starts at 7.5 hours, it's always a half into the next mazel, more than that cycle of 7. That's what it's saying over here, that it's meshucha, it's a half hour into the next mazel. V'amar Shmuel, another thing Shmuel said, Ein lecha tkufas nissen shenefeles betzedek. The tkufa of Nisan, you won't have a situation where the tkufa of Nisan, the season of Nisan, fell out to be in the mazel of tzedek, she'eina mishaberes asaylonis, that you're not going to have an extremely strong wind that will break the trees. Ve'en lecha tkufas tevis shenefeles betzedek, and the same thing also if the season of tevis begins in the mazel of tzedek, she'enimi yabeshes esazroim, that you're not going to have a very dry season. And the tevis time is typically, at least in Eretz Yisrael, they rely on the rain very strongly in the winter. But if the mazel starts tzedek, so then it's going to be a very dry season. But for who the isyalad levana oibelevana oibetzedek. But this is only if the meilad levana of Nisan or of tevis took place in the mazel of levana or the mazel of tzedek. So if these two things come together, so then you're going to have a trouble, whether you're going to have a big hurricane that's going to break the trees, or you're going to have a very, very dry winter and you're not going to have enough rain. Okay, that ends the Gemara beneged to the Tkufis, and beneged to the Gemara brought this all beneged to the method to figure out the Ruchais HaOlam, to see how to measure the square of your city. Let's continue weiter. Amud Beis. Tan Rabbanan. The Rabbana learned in the Braisa, Hamarabeya Esair, when you are making your city into a square, to know the tchum, Oisa Oisa Kemin Tavla Merubas, so you make it like a square tavla. How would I touch the word tavla? You have the word over there? Like a square tablet. The chayzer umerabeya satchumin, and then you also make the tchum around it also a square. V'oisna oisa kemin tavla murabas, and it's also like a square. Okishahu maidid, and when you're measuring the 2,000 amas, lo yimdoid me emtza hakeren al payamama, do not measure from the corner, diagonally from the corner 2,000 amas, because then you're going to lose the corners. What does this mean? You're going to lose the space by doing this in the corners. So first of all, take a look and picture Shin Yud. So you see right over here, there's a city in the middle, it's round, and you square it out as a square tablet. And then the tchum around. So you make the tchum on all sides, also a tablet of 2,000 amas that you measure all around. Now, take a look on the next page and picture Shin Yud Aleph. So here, when a person is measuring the tchum, he's making the tablet, a square tablet around the city. So how does he measure this square tablet? So the Gemara says, don't measure it the way it is in picture Shin Yud Aleph. If you're measuring it in the picture Shin Yud Aleph, you're measuring a diagonal line from the square of the city to the end of the square of the tchum. So there you get 2,000 amas. But if you're going to do that, so then if you're going to be measuring straight up, as you see here, straight up in the picture, what do you get? You get much less. You get 1428. Okay, we learned this already a few times before, and the Gemara is going to discuss it again, that a diagonal line, if you compare a straight line to a diagonal line, with a diagonal line you gain 2/5. 2/5 you gain. So if 2,000 amas is going to be your diagonal line to the corners, so then you're going to get only 1,428 amas straight up. So the Gemara is saying that's not the way to measure it. You don't measure to the zaviyas, because then, because of that, you're losing space. Ella, rather, what you do is, like it says in the next picture, Mevi tavla mirubas shi alpayim mama al alpayim mama. You take a square tablet of 2,000 amas, umanicha bekeren balaksaina, and you place it by all the corners. Nimtza sa'ir. So now, to take a look in picture Shin Yud Beis. This is how you have to make your tchum. You place the 2,000 amas at the corners. That's where you put a square tablet of 2,000 amas.
And not diagonals, straight up and straight to the side.
Yeah. So now it comes out, you gain a lot of space. You gain a lot of space for your tchum by placing the tablet of the square of 2,000 amas over there in the corner. And the Gemara now explains exactly what you gain. Nimtzas ha'ir mistakeres arba meis amalekan va'arba meis amalekan. So first of all, the city itself, which was a circle, and you created a square around the city, right over there, you gain 400 amas on each side. And also, and nimtzu tchumin mistakrin ches meis amas lekan u'shmeina meis amas lekan. And with the tchum, with the square that you made for the tchum, you end up gaining another 800 amas on each side, as you see in picture Shin Yud Gimel. So again, you have the city in the middle, which is a circle, and you created a square around that city. You gain 400 amas on each side of that square. And then you have the squares that you created for the tchum around. And if you measure across, it comes out that you have an extra 800 amas on each side that you gain for the squares that you made on the corners. So the Gemara says, so how much do you gain altogether? Nimtzu ha'ir utchumen mistakren elef u'masayim lekan ve'elef u'masayim lekan. This 1,200 amas that you're gaining by creating these squares. But now the Gemara explains, all of these measurements that we just said, when is this relevant? When is these numbers true? Amar Abaye u'mishkachasla b'mased ave trei alfa. Atrei alpha. This is all true when we're talking about a city that's 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. That's the kind of city we're talking about. If we're talking about a city that's smaller than that, so then the amount that you gain is much less. Again, this is all based on the rule that whatever you have in a square, so if you measure it diagonally, so then you get 2/5. You add 2/5 to whatever it would be in a straight line. So therefore over here as well, you measure and you add 800 amas for the city in the middle, and you add 800 amas on both sides for the square on the top and the square in the bottom. So together you add 1200 amas to your tchum. Okay? Okay, so that's Benegea to the city. How to make, the Amma says you have it even in Rashi over here. If you take a look in Rashi, the picture is there. It's not as clear as it is in these pictures, but Rashi brings the picture as well. Okay.
Rashi actually made those pictures?
Yes. Yeah. Now the Gemara comes to another place where you have to add 2,000 amas. Where else is there a measurement of adding 2,000 amas? We had it mentioned in the Gemara before. The cities that the Levium were given in Eretz Yisrael, you had to make 2,000 amas around their city. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to talk about those 2,000 amas. Part of it was used, we'll see here, the Gemara is going to explain. Part of it was used the places where they planted trees and gardens and so on. But part of it had to be a migrash. Part of it just had to be empty area. 1,000 amas had to be empty area for them to have space to store things or to use it. Migrash, that's what the Torah says. 1,000 amas has to be a migrash. Let's see what the Brisa says. Tanya Amar Rabbi Eliezer Barab Yaisi. Tchum ore Leviim, the tchum that's around the cities of the Leviim, alpayim amma. The Torah says it has to be 2,000 amas. Tzei mehen elef amma migrash. But you have to deduct from this 1,000 amas that is going to be an empty area. That's what the Torah says. Elef amma has to be a migrash. Nimtzam, so now it comes out, migrash, this empty area that you place around the cities of the Leviim, riviyah. It's going to be a quarter of that area around the city. V'hashar, and then the rest, sadais ukromim. And the rest is going to be fields and vineyards. And now the Gemara brings the source of the pasuk. We're going to see exactly the pshat and the shir. The whole Gemara here is going to be discussing this lashon that the Brisa says that the empty area is a quarter. What does it mean that the empty area is a quarter? Well, we're getting to that in a second. But first the Gemara brings the source of the pasuk. So Menan, Emili, Amaravid, Amakra, the pasuk says, Mikir ha'ir v'chutza, from the walls of the city outside, Elef amas saviv, 1,000 amas outside, Amra Teire, the Teire says, Save v'seir be'elef, surround the city with 1,000 amas. Nimtza migrash revia, the empty area around the city is going to be a quarter of this tchum that's outside the city. Okay, a quarter the Brisa says. So this is the point that the Gemara focuses on now. Revia, is it only a quarter of this area that you leave outside the city? Palgahava, isn't it half? If you're telling me that the area outside the city has to be 2,000 amas, and half of it, 1,000, should be migrash, an empty area, so that's half, not a quarter. That's the questions. The Gemara is going to give 4 answers to this. Rava, Abaye, Ravina, and Ravashi. Ready? Zak the Gemara. Amar Rava, so Rava explained as follows. So for this we're going to have to use a lot of the pictures here to see every single step of the Gemara. So Rava says, Bar Ade Mishucha Asbarili. Bar Ade, which was measuring with a string, he explained me how exactly this is only a quarter. Mishkachasla, this makes sense in the following situation. B'mased Avyet Terei Alfi Atrei Alfi. You have a city, the city itself is a 2,000 by 2,000 square amas. Tchum Kamahavya. So now, if you're creating a tchum outside of the city and you're creating 1,000 square amas, shitzer kronis, shitzer. Again, shitzer kronis. You're going to have 16. You're going to have 16 squares of 1,000 amas. Take a look in the picture. Where do you have 16 squares of 1,000 amas? Picture Shin Yud Daled. Okay. So you see what it says. You see what I have over here. So how many? So the city itself is 2,000 amas by 2,000 amas. Okay. So the tchum, the 2,000 amas. If you want to divide squares, and each square is 1,000 amas by 1,000 amas, 1,000 amas square feet. So you get on each side, you get 4, 4, 4, and 4. How much is that? 16. So you have 16 squares of 1,000 amas. Okay?
That's 16 times 1,000.
16 times 1,000 square amas.
That's 160,000.
I'm not sure what the number is, but the point is the Gemara wants to figure out how you get a quarter. Why are we saying? Sorry about that. The Gemara is trying to figure out why is it that the migrash is considered to be only a quarter? So the Gemara says, let's start with dividing this into 1,000 amas of 1,000 square amas. You get on each side of the tchum four. Don't count the corners. You see, you have the karnais only where it says tchum. Those four squares on each side where it says tchum in this picture, that's what you're counting. So therefore, from that you get 1,000 square amas. Okay, let's continue. Yeah. So the Gemara says afterwards, what else do you have to add to that? Now you're adding corners as well. Those 16 are 16 squares of 1,000 amas on the tchum of each side. But the corners, you also have to add the corners. How much are they? Shitza. You have another 16. Right? You take a look in the corner. You have again the same exact things that you have to add into the corners. So you have six in each corner. You have 4 squares of 1,000 square amas. So how much do you have together? So you have 16 and 16. That's 32. You have 32 squares of 1,000 square amas. Now, dal tamanya de tchumen. So now the migrosh, that area of 1,000 amas. This is the reason why we're dealing with 1,000 amas of square amas, is because we want to figure out how you're going to remove 1,000 amas around and around and around. So now if you remove 8 of the tchumen, va'arba the kronais, take a look in the picture. If you're taking out the migrosh, which is 1,000 amas around and around, so it comes out that you're removing 8 of the 1,000 square amas that are right around, and 4 of the corners. Together, that's 12. 12 out of the 32. 12 out of these 32 squares you're removing, that's the space of the migrosh. Okay, so this migrosh, how much is it going to be of the 32? Is it a quarter? Are we getting to the number that we're looking for, that it should be a quarter? No, it's not. Let's see. The Gemara will explain. Oh, very good. Let's see in the Lashon of the Gemara. So dalt manye de tchumen v'arba de kronos kama have treisar. So now you have, for your empty area, the migrash, it's going to be 12 of these 1,000 squares, 1,000 amas squares. Nimtza, it comes out migrash revia. Are you going to tell me now that this migrash is a quarter of this whole area? Tvei metilseninu. 12 from 32 is more than a third. It's more than a third, so why are we saying that it's a quarter? So the Gemara explains, I see arba de masa. Add the city itself. The city itself is 2,000 square amas by 2,000 square amas. So if you cut that into areas of 1,000, so you have another 4. Add another 4 squares of 1,000 amas. So you add 4 from the city. Shadi alayu, add it to this. So what do you have now? You add 4 to 32, you have 36. I'm talking about the total. If you add it to the total number of all the 1,000 square amas that you have all around, it was 32, right? In this picture here, Shin Yudalet. Now you add from the city itself another 4 squares, so you have 36. So together you have 36 square of 1,000, total of 1,000 amas. Wow. Now 12 of 36 is how much? It's still a third. Very good. That's what the Gemara is going to ask right now. Frek the Gemara kati til sahave. This is a third. So the Gemara says, no, there's another detail you have to add over here. Mi savres biribua kamar. Do you think this Braisa is talking about a city that's square? Bi gula kamar. It's talking about a city that's a circle. Kama merube yeser ala igol. How much is a square larger than a circle that's inside the square? Revia. It's a quarter of what the square is, you lose in the circle. So dal revia minayu. Take off from the 12 squares. We said before that there's 12 squares surrounding this migrash, but because now it's in the shape of a circle, remove a quarter from 12. If you remove a quarter from 12, what do you get? 9. Pashaluhu tisha. You get 9. V'tisha mitlas and v'shita rivahave. 9 from 32 is a quarter. So you have this in picture Shin Tezayin. Okay, so here you see it's a square, it's a circle city, and the migrash is that shaded area that's around. You see in picture Shin Tezayin? So the shaded area that's around, that's what the migrash was. Now this circle is a quarter of the whole entire area that's here, because you're not giving it the full square. It's a circle. Even though usually, when you get to a city, the Gemara will soon explain, we make the city into a square. We consider the city into a square and we give it, but not when you get to the migrash. The point of the empty area is that they should have it for the beauty or for the usage around the city, so you don't square that out. It's a circle around. So this circle is a quarter from the whole entire area of the 36 boxes of 1,000 square amas. Okay, this is Rav's Pshat in the Braisa, why it's at a quarter. Abaye says, Mishkachas lo nami b'mosed ahava alpha ba'alpha. I'll give you an example of a city that's a smaller city, 1,000 by 1,000 amas. Tchumen kama havya. How many squares of 1,000 amas do you have around it? Tmanya. You have 8. Do I have it over here in the picture? No. I don't see over here a picture for this. It's very simple. I mean, if you have a city which is 1,000 square amas, so then you have to have 2,000 amas in each direction. So you have on each side 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. So what is that? How many do you have? 8. You have 8. You have Pashat. You have 8 squares of 1,000 amas on each side. Then krones, but you have to fill in the corners as well. Krones kama have. How much do you have to put into the circle? Shitzer. When you fill in the corners, it's going to be double the amount. The empty space of the corners is going to be 16. So how much do you have together? 16 plus 8 is going to be 24. So you have 24 squares of 1,000 amas surrounding this city. Dal arba. Now, if you want to give,
How do you get 24 again?
because it is picture Shin Yud Zayin. Sorry, I thought we didn't have a picture of that. Take a look in picture Shin Yud Zayin. So you have a city that's 1,000 square amas, and then you have on each side for the actual tchum that you have to give. So you have 8, 2 on each side, and then you have in the corners. You have to fill in the corners. You fill in 4 on each corners. So you have 16 for the corners, so 8 and 16 in the corners, you have 24. You have 24 squares of 1,000 amas that are surrounding this city. Now, you want to have the migrash around. What's that migrash around? How much are you deducting over here for the migrash around? So the Gemara says now, Dal arba the tchumin, 4 squares of 1,000 amas, va'arba the krones, and 4 from the corners. So kama hava, how many squares are you deducting for the migrash? Tamanya, it's 8. How much is 8 from 24? Frekte Gemara til sahava. That's a third. 8 from 24 is a third, not a quarter. We said in the Brais it's a quarter. So the Gemara again says the same point it said before. Mi savres biribua kama. Do you think we're talking about a city which is square? Bi igula kama. We're talking about a city that's a circle. Kama merube yeser ala igul revia. A circle that's inside a square. The square is a quarter more than the circle. So therefore, revia again. Kama merube yeser ala revia. Dal revia. Take a quarter off of 8. How much do you have if you take a quarter off of 8? Pashalu shita. So you have only 6 squares, and the shita mechav daled riva have. 6 of 24 is a quarter. So it comes out that it's going to be a quarter. Okay. Which is which picture? It's picture Shin Yud Tes. If you want to see how you get this measurement, it's picture Shin Yud Tes. Okay, we come now to the third answer of the Gemara, of how you get a quarter for the migrash that's surrounding the city of the Leviim. We're going to finish with the Mishnah, if it's okay. Ravina says, my revia, you know what it means when it says that you have to leave a quarter of the area to be a migrash? Revia de tchumen. Revia of the actual area of the tchum that you have to leave around the cities. We're not including the squares of the corners. Those corners you don't leave for a migrash, right? There's no migrash in those areas, so take a look in picture Shin Chaf. So there's the actual tchum that you have to leave around the city, but then there's the fill-in of the corners. The filling in of the corners, that there's no migrash over there. So the Levium didn't have to have a... so therefore, if you take how many squares do you have around the city, what was it? 32? All right, 32 squares around the city. So if you have only 2, 4, 6, 8, what's 8 from 32? It's going to...
No.
It's
a quarter.
8 from 32 is going to be a quarter. Exactly, very good. So that's Ravina's teretz. Basically, do not include in the migrash the squares of the corners. So then you do get a quarter. Rav Ashi says a similar teretz, but the other way around. Rav Ashi Amar, my revia, you know what means revia? Revia the kronois. The square what it means is the revia, quarter only of the corners. He says the opposite. The migrash that they provided, empty area around the city, was only a revia of the corners. Take a look in picture Shin Chaf Aleph. In the corners you have 4 squares of 1,000 amas. One of them, the one that's closest to the city, that's the one that was kept empty, not the other ones in between. So it's a quarter of the corners. That's what it's going on. Okay, different pshat. So now the Gemara is going to focus on Rav Ashi's pshat.
But it comes up the same thing, just that he takes it to the
different, exactly. Oh, Ravina asked Rav Ashi, how could you say that the migrash around the city is only by the corners? The Torah says you have to leave this empty area of a migrash around, surrounding the city, not only the corners. So he answers him, my saviv the kronos. The word saviv over here refers to the corners. Surround, in each side, on all the sides, the corners. If you're not going to interpret the meaning of saviv that way, by karbanis, it brings a very interesting example. By karbanis, what does it say? That you have to sprinkle the blood in the mizbeach saviv. What is the meaning of the word saviv there? Hachanami saviv mamish, does it mean saviv? It doesn't. They didn't actually sprinkle the blood all around. What do they do? Elamai saviv the kronos. Over there, they sprinkle the blood on the corners. Shtaim shein arba. They put it on the corners, and from the corners it spread around to the sides. But the place where they sprinkled the blood was on the corners. So hachanami over here as well. My saviv the kronos. The word saviv over here does not mean literally that you have to go around and around to leave that empty area. It has to be saviv only in the corners. That qualifies for saviv. Okay, so we had 4 different shatim, how to leave the empty area around the city, and what was the meaning of the braisa that it said, the term of revia, how you get to that cheshbon of a quarter. So now the Gemara goes back and just questions one point that we said before. Amalei Rav Chavivi me chuzna le Rav Ashi. So what did we say before? According to the teretz of Rava, right, and similar also the teretz of Abaya, that the reason why you get a quarter is because we're talking about a city that's a circle, and therefore the empty area around the city is also in a circle. So he asks him that, again, but you have the corners of the circle. Why are you saying that it's a circle if you have the actual corners that are square? Shouldn't it be the square as well? Don't you have to include that in the migrash as well? Why do you make the migrash only a circle? So he answers him, B'masa igulsa. We're talking about a city that's round. It's because it's a round city, so therefore the migrash around it is also round. And it doesn't have the corners. Fragt the Gemara, but v'harivua. But didn't we square out this circle? When you create the tchum around the city, the whole area around these cities of the Levium, even a circle city, you have to also consider it to be like square and give the whole tchum around with all the corners and not circle. So why the migrash, why the empty space around the city are you only giving it as a circle? So the Gemara answers, Medam Rabbanan Chazinon. The Rabbanan are saying that we consider it Kemanda Merabba, as if it's square, and therefore we provide the whole square of the tchum around to be square. But are we actually changing the actual city itself? The city itself is a circle. The city is not a square. So for the purpose of the migrash, for the empty area that the Torah says around, we keep it to a circle. For the whole tchum that we give around the city, we consider it to be a square. But for the purpose of the migrash, it remains a circle. And therefore the cheshbon we said before remains. Another question, Amalei Rav Chaniloi Mechuznal Rav Ashi, going back to what we said before, when we measure diagonally as opposed to measuring straight. Mechdi, let's see, Kama Merube Yeser Ala Igel. When you have a square and then you have inside the square a circle, how much more do you get in the square than you get from the circle? How much larger is a square more than the circle that's inside of it? Revia, a quarter more. If so, going back to the cheshbon that we mentioned before, Hani Tmani Meya, we said earlier that when you measure diagonally in a square as opposed to measuring straight, what do you gain? You gain 800 in the corners. That's what we said before in the Braisa. You gain 800 by measuring diagonally. Why are you gaining 800? Shis meya v'shitten v'sheven nakit tilsahave. You should only gain 666 and 2/3 of an avamis. If a circle inside a square is a quarter less than what the square is, so if you make the cheshbon from 2,000, it should only be 666 and 2/3, not 800. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the right cheshbon here. Amalei hanemili biigula migai rivua. When you have a circle that's inside a square, so then the rule is, I think in English this is called pi, that you have the circle inside the square is going to be a
3.14.
Something like that, yeah. So that's the rule, that it's going to be like the Gemara is saying over here, that it's a revia more. The Taisus actually says over here that it's not precise. The cheshbon that Chazal are making here, ein a cheshbon mechuven. And Taisus makes the whole entire cheshbon, and Taisus cuts it up in 10 by 10 pieces to show you how the cheshbon of the Gemara is not mechuven, but it doesn't matter. The Gemara knows it's not mechuven, and the Gemara is making this cheshbon anyway. So again, when we talk about the circle that's inside the square, so then the method that we use is that the circle, you're losing a quarter of that whole space of the square. But over here we're talking about something else. Over here what we're talking about is measuring straight from one side of a square to the other side of the square, as opposed to measuring diagonally from one corner to the other corner diagonally. How much do you gain by measuring diagonally over measuring straight from one side to the other? That's something else. Over here, being a tfei, over here you gain much more, and there's a different method for that. The omamar, because it was said, and we mentioned this before, kol amsa biribua, anytime you have a amma, which in its square, it's going to be one amma, amsa v'trei chumshi balaksaina. Measuring it from side to side diagonally, it's going to be an amma and 2/5. So that's a different method, and that's the method that we're using here, and therefore for 2,000 ammas, you gain more. You gain 800 ammas. You can take a look over here in the picture. So they have picture Shin Chav Gimel. So that's a circle inside the square. So the square, you have all the corners. You're gaining all the corners. That's the riva that it says that you gain with the square. But then you have in picture Shin Chav Dalid, where we're talking about a different concept. Measuring diagonally from corner to corner as opposed to measuring straight across. Over here you gain more. Over here you gain 800 amas more than the 2,000. Okay.